Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm really glad you're here because today we're taking the Baumalight on the road to do some backyard mulching. So my cousin has a neighbor whose backyard has really been overtaken by brush. And I went over there and took a look at it, and I think the Baumalight with the brush mulching head is going to be just what we need. I've hauled this Baumalight a couple of times, and a few times I used my 5x10 utility trailer, which has a pretty good weight rating. I think it's 2,500 pounds or so. The Baumalight TRL630D weighs 2,900 pounds without the mulching head, so we're talking 1.5 tons for that little machine, and you can tell it's really heavy. So today I'm using my heavy trailer, and I think that's the way to do it. Even though the machine is small and it fits, I mean, it would really fit in the back of a pickup truck, I think, but it is really, really heavy. So I feel much better using this bigger trailer to haul this thing around. I'm towing with my F-150, and I've got the 5-liter Coyote engine in this. I read that the V6 has the same horsepower, 300 horsepower, and more torque, but I just am old school and I just wanted to have the V8. But I hear those V6s pull really well. There's also drive settings or drive mode, which I think most trucks probably have, and I used to think that was kind of a silly thing, like that it really didn't do anything. But when I put it in tow mode, it makes a difference because it's all electronic, and I don't know if it changes the fuel map of the engine, but it does change the shift pattern. For instance, this truck has a 10-speed automatic transmission. When you put it in tow mode, it won't go past 7th gear. So you've got more RPMs out of the motor, more power. It also changes the shift pattern for downshifting. When you come up to a stop, you can really feel it downshift and use some engine braking to stop the truck. It doesn't shift as early when you're upshifting, so it revs out a little bit more. So it's kind of neat how these electronics can make a difference with these vehicles. This is what you call an easy to miss driveway. All right, so let me show you what we have here, and then you can get a good idea of what we're going to be doing today. So starting to the right of this debris here, we're not going to mess with that at all. Starting to the right here, you can see this is all overgrown with briars and brush. And in the back here, there's some old block buildings. They were chicken coops apparently years ago. So you can barely walk through there. I did push through just to make sure there wasn't anything back there that I'm going to hit or have problems with. A lot of small trees. Again, here it's a lot of small stuff. So let me step back so we can get a better view of how big this is. It's a big area here. This ivy, as pretty as it is, we're going to get rid of a lot of that in there. There's some big trees here. They're going to be cutting the limbs off of those to clear those. But what my job here today is to clear as much as I can so that they can get back here to clear limbs and whatnot. And even all the way back here, there's an old barn, another building, so they want to have access to this to either tear it down, or I don't think they're going to use it, but there's a lot of history here, it looks like. So a lot of this I'm just going to clear as much as I can. I think the mulching head is going to be great for that. Again, all through here. You can see I parked way up there. So I'm going to be taking it from that far side all the way over to here and going to stop basically at the end of where all this brush and vines are. So that's what we're up against today, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Well, I've hit a few surprises that are not really surprises. You can expect that when you're working around an old farm or old buildings, there are going to be things either buried or half buried or on the surface just below all the brush, so you really can't see what's going on there. Not surprised that I've hit a few cinder blocks, but I also just hit a big piece of metal and some other rocks. So I'm just going to take a moment to take a look at my cutting teeth to make sure I haven't done any significant damage. These are carbide tipped teeth, so they're really strong. I see I've got a chip on that one there. So far, everything's in pretty good shape. You know, they get rounded off a little bit, but they're still really hard and do a good job. So, yeah. Looks like that one is really the main one that's chipped. And I do have a replacement cutting tooth for that, but I don't think there's any need to change that at this point. Yeah, it's got a good chip out of it, but the rest of them are in good shape. You know, one of my favorite sayings is, nature always wins. And when you look at this old barn, it's easy to see that nature is taking over. But what I think is really interesting is that as soon as we build something, whatever it is, nature is immediately trying to take it back. So mankind, we are in a constant battle against nature. Just cutting your lawn every week, that's a battle against nature, because nature is trying to take back what is rightfully hers. So you just look at an old house or something that hasn't been lived in for a few years. It doesn't take long at all before nature starts taking over. You know, a limb might fall through the roof and then it starts to rot, or growth is coming up all around. So it's interesting to me to think that we're in a constant battle. And it's not good against evil, but it's just man against nature. You know, for instance, you look at this barn, and there's no reason that this barn today couldn't look as pristine as it did the day it was built. But think about the amount of maintenance it would have taken through the years. It would have been constant maintenance to address every little chip of paint, or little leak in the roof, or little crack in the door. So if we're willing to fight for it, we can keep battling against nature. But when we let it go like this is what happens. And that's not to say that anybody's to blame for letting something go, because sometimes it just gets away from us, or there's no longer a use here. Like this used to be, from what I understand, a chicken farm, and we're standing inside a building right now. The roof is gone. Anything wood is gone, but the block foundation is still there. But it's been taken over as well. You know, the blocks are leaning now. They're starting to fall in. They're collapsing. They're getting hit by a brush mulcher. But even the foundation, as the trees and the roots start to grow and push against it, it's on an angle. So I just think it's fascinating, and I've always enjoyed abandoned places because I think it's just interesting to see what happens. But back to this mulching job, I think, although I knew there could be surprises underneath all this brush and growth, I should have been a little more prepared for it. I hit several surprises, some pretty big stones and rocks that I was not really expecting. And I think a good indication when you see kind of a green hump of growth without really trees or anything growing through it, there's probably something underneath of that. And that's what this looked like. You know, a lot of it was just tree limbs and whatnot, but lots of stones and rocks. And of course, back toward the barns, there were blocks, which was not a big surprise, but there were a few scattered out throughout the property as well. But overall, this looks really good. So let's go back to the beginning and take the same walk we did when we got here. So we started off just to the right of that debris there, like we said, and just came across as close to the trees as I could. That was my first concrete or cinder block that I hit there, and there was some over here as well. But I came through here, and I knew there was a a hole at this tree from walking it earlier, so I avoided that area. I'm not sure if that's an old, I don't think it's a well, but anyway, it's at least a foot or so deep. I didn't step down or stick anything in there. I just knew that to stay away from it. So I got as close as I could to the buildings here and really cleared up this area where you can walk really nicely. Some of these big stumps or big pieces of tree and brush, you know, the mulcher can cut it off, but it's hard for it to get it all the way down. Again, here's a, I thought that was like a concrete step, but looking now, it's actually part of that wall that must have fallen out years ago. So that's part of the wall there, so I avoided that. I couldn't get closer than that, so big tree that fell there. But I was able to get all the way up to that, all the way up to the edge of the property. And I mentioned to them they're gonna have some cleanup that they're gonna have to do here, some manual labor. There's a lot to be picked up, but it's gonna die off after being mulched like this, and it'll be easier to maintain. A lot of these pieces of brush that are still sticking up, you know, I think they'll die off, but they'll need some attention. This was a big old pile of rocks. That was a surprise. And then back here are some big vines. So I was able to get in there really well. You know, this other stuff could be hit with a mower. And then I came all the way to the edge. And here there were a few things buried underneath too. It looks like this was a tree that had fallen. So I was able to mulch on each side of that. And over here, there was some more things buried. But overall, we got it. It looks really good. Even though I try to make really wide turns with that Baumalight, the tracks still make marks. So that's hard to avoid. Apparently I was going backwards here, and I must have backed into my ramps. Didn't even realize that, so shame on me. Thank goodness it wasn't the truck though. Well, once again, thanks for hanging out with me today. I really do appreciate it. If you like this video and you like this type of content, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like or that thumbs up button. And if you've not yet subscribed on YouTube or followed on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok, I invite you to join me. Thanks for watching, and as always, I look forward to seeing you next time.